In the last video, we worked with the line command. Okay, so when we use a line, when we click and click again, we can create a chaining effect and we can end it by hitting enter. Okay, so we've created a long line here that twists and turns in a few different directions. That was simple to do at these 90-degree angles because at the bottom of the screen we have on ortho. If we just happen to click on any one of these line segments, we'll see that they're all individual. Okay, so at any point we could click on one and hit erase or the delete key and get rid of one of those. Okay, so if we wanted to create a shape, for example, with the line command, we would see they're all individual lines. So I'll click on line and I will click on my starting point, and then I will pull the mouse up, and maybe I will make this a 10-foot long line. I will pull the mouse over and do 10 feet again, straight down 10 feet, and then over 10 feet. So I've created a box that's 10 by 10. If I click on this, each line is an individual line. Well, what if I wanted to do that a little more easily? I could use my object snap, use line, and do 10 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet. And then at this point, I actually would not have to type in the measurement. I would have a couple of other options. With object snap on, when I pull the mouse over and hover a little bit, I get that snapping to the end point. So if I click, I know that that closed up very, very nicely. So if I zoom in, I see that that's a nice 90-degree angle. I could accomplish the same thing by doing my line again and doing 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet. And then here, if we take a look at the command line, you'll see that we can actually type in C to close the object. When you do a C for close, it will take the point you're at right now and connect it with a line to the point you started with. Okay, so if I do C enter, I have a nice closed box again, all with individual lines. If I wanted these to be all continuous, I could actually start out with a polyline. If we look up at our Home tab under the Draw panel, right next to line we have Polyline. Okay, so I'll click on Polyline, and you'll see that down the command line it's referred to as a P line. All right, I will come over and I'll do the same procedure. I will do a click where I want it to begin. I'll pull the mouse up and I'll do 10 feet, enter. Then I'll pull my mouse over the direction I want the line to go. Say 10 feet, enter, down 10 feet, enter. And now I have the same options really of either typing in 10 feet, using object snaps, or C for close to close this shape. So right now I'll just use object snaps to click it, and I'll hit enter. So essentially these all look exactly the same at this point. These three will all be individual lines. This one will be a polyline. So this one I can click on and see that it's a singular group of lines here. This one, if I click on it, it's all one continuous polyline. Okay, so that's polyline, and then you click to create your shape. And you have the options to do a click or a C for close, just like we did before, but this is a continuous line versus individual lines. This will become much more important later when we get into doing things like hatching and gradients, things like fillet and chamfer, and then it becomes very critical when you're moving from 2D to 3D. So play around and feel out the difference between using simple line segments that's still chain versus a polyline that will be one continuous unit. Now, sometimes you'll be drawing and you start out with a line but you realize that you want it to be all connected or something. We can actually join lines together. Okay, so here, even though these are all separate, what we can do is a modify command called join. So under the Home tab, if I come to the Modify panel, click that little arrow, what we do is look for a button that looks like this, where it's two arrows that are kind of pointing towards each other. This is called join. So I'm going to pick that, and then I will pick all of my individual lines that are making up this square. Once I have them all selected, you'll see down here it says join, select objects to join. I just hit the enter key. Then it tells me that 4 objects converted to one polyline. So where there was once 4, there is now 1. Okay? So I can also type in join, or just the letter J is the shortcut. Select a group of 4 lines here, hit enter, and it will join them all together into a singular polyline. Likewise, once something's actually joined together into a polyline, whether you use join or actually drew it that way, you can actually separate them as well. So what we do there is something called explode. Okay, it sounds a little violent, but it gets the job done. So if I have something like this, where it's these different twists and turns, so it's a polyline, but it's really 4 lines. If we come up to the Modify tab, below the eraser, there's a button called Explode, and it looks like a cube that's bursting apart at the seams. I can click on that, and it says Explode, one found in the command line. If I click on this now, you'll see that, sure thing, it's 4 individual lines now. I can also type in the letter X and hit enter. X is a shortcut for explode. Pick a polyline, hit enter, and now it's burst apart into 4 separate line segments. So in a way, the process of creating something with lines or polylines and then joining them or exploding them, is really fairly fluid. So, depending what you're looking for, it's fairly simple to go back and forth to get what you're looking for.